My husband stole $95,000 from me with his mistress. Not from some forgotten savings account. Not from money we had built together. He took it from the business I had spent 6 years building from nothing. And for almost 4 months, Michael and Sarah were certain they had covered every trace. They deleted emails. They created invoices. They moved the money through accounts I had never seen before. By the time I realized what was happening, they had already planned what they were going to do with my money, and, apparently, with the rest of my life. But they made one mistake, a very expensive one. They bought something they believed would prove they had won. Instead, it gave me the first piece of evidence I needed to destroy everything they had planned. My name is Victoria Hayes. I'm 28 years old. I live in Greenville, South Carolina, and I'm an interior designer. I work for myself now, although saying that so casually makes it sound much easier than it actually was. I built Hayes Interior Studio from a folding desk in the corner of a one-bedroom apartment. No investors, no family money, no wealthy client handing me a lucky break. Just me. If you've ever trusted someone completely only to discover they were quietly building a second life behind your back, hit the like button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And subscribe, because what Michael thought was the end of my business turned out to be the beginning of his biggest problem. The morning I discovered the money was missing started with a cabinet order. That's it. A cabinet order. One of my clients, a couple named Denise and Robert Keller, was renovating a 4,200 square foot home outside Greenville. It was one of the largest residential projects I'd ever handled, and I'd been obsessing over every detail for months. Custom walnut cabinetry, white oak flooring, handmade tile from North Carolina. The kind of project that could lead to 3 more if I got it right. My cabinet supplier called at 9:17 on a Tuesday morning. "Victoria, we haven't received the second deposit." I was standing in my home office with one shoe on, trying to answer emails while drinking coffee. I laughed. "You scared me for a second, Paul. I sent it last Thursday." There was silence. Not long. Maybe 2 seconds. But I've replayed those 2 seconds more times than I can count. "Victoria," he said carefully, "I don't have it." I opened my banking app. My business checking account should have held a little over $118,000. Some of that money belonged to upcoming projects. Some was reserved for taxes. About $40,000 was profit I had intentionally left untouched because I wanted to lease a real studio downtown instead of meeting clients at coffee shops and material showrooms. The number on my screen was 23,416. Same number. Opened it again. 23,716. Then I sat down. This wasn't one of them. Everything became strangely quiet. I opened the transaction history. $8,500. Then $12,750. Then $6,200, and that was the point. $14,800, $9,600, $1,750. Then one final. Transfer. $26,000, $95,000. Gone. That decision mattered more than I understood at the time. "Do you recognize Sable House Procurement LLC? No. Ridgeway Design Logistics? No. Both recipients were previously authorized. Authorized by who? She couldn't give me everything over the phone, but she could tell me the transactions had not triggered the bank's usual fraud protections because the recipient accounts had been added using valid credentials. "Was there another authorized user on the business account?" she asked. Michael. It hadn't seemed dangerous. It had seemed practical. Michael worked in commercial equipment sales. He was organized, good with numbers, and constantly telling me I needed to stop wasting nights doing administrative work. "You're a designer, Vic," he would say. "Why are you sitting here matching receipts at midnight?" Nothing major at first. Eventually, when I was traveling for a project in Charleston and needed someone to approve an urgent transfer, I added him to the account. My husband. Why wouldn't I? No answer. I called again. Then I remembered where he was supposed to be. Michael had left before sunrise for what he called a regional sales meeting. He'd kissed me on the forehead while I was half asleep and told me he'd probably be home late. 6:12 a.m. There was a heart after it. The bank representative was still talking. Mrs. Hayes? Yes. I'm going to recommend that we temporarily restrict all secondary access. Do it. And change your online credentials immediately. Do it. Bank account, business email, accounting software. Then I called my accountant, Rachel Bennett. Rachel had been with me since my second year in business, back when I was excited because I'd made enough money to owe taxes. I sent her screenshots. Victoria, don't confront Michael yet. Not hello. Don't confront Michael. Why? Because I want copies before anyone realizes you're looking. Anyone. Not Michael. What are you seeing? I don't know yet. Rachel. I said I don't know yet. Give me an hour. She hung up. Not completely. I didn't call Michael again. Sable House Procurement, LLC. That was unusual. I searched the address. A mailbox center. Then I searched Ridgeway Design Logistics. Different address. No warehouse. No trucks. No employees I could find. I pulled invoices from my accounting software. There they were. Furniture procurement, custom fabrication. Whoever had done this hadn't randomly stolen $95,000. I opened the first invoice, Sable House Procurement, $8,500, my logo, purchase description. Then I saw the initials at the bottom. Michael Hayes. I leaned back in my chair. It wasn't. Maybe Michael had hired a subcontractor and forgotten to tell me. Maybe he'd moved money temporarily. Maybe. Love can make an intelligent person negotiate against evidence sitting directly in front of them. Rachel. Do you have Michael's personal credit card statements? No. Joint checking? Yes. Open it. Rachel stayed silent while I scrolled. Gas. Normal. Then she told me to go back 3 months and look for charges on the same dates as the business transfers, the Grand Bohemian Lodge. You two stay there? Rachel asked. No. Another transfer date, 174, a boutique hotel near Lake Kiowee, $412. Michael had told me he was in Charlotte that weekend. Rachel must have heard something in my silence. What? Nothing. Victoria. He wasn't where he said he was. She didn't need to. Money was one thing, but even then I didn't know about Sarah. Not yet. Michael had always been careful with social media. He rarely posted anything, and when he did, it was usually golf, work events, or some painfully staged anniversary photo of us. But other people weren't as careful. There were hundreds of photos. Then I saw Michael's blue jacket in the background of a photograph, posted by a woman celebrating her birthday. The picture wasn't of him. I zoomed in. Across from a woman. I couldn't see her face clearly, but I recognized the bracelet. At our house. Michael had hosted a small dinner for several people from work. 6 or 7 coworkers came over. One of them was a woman named Sarah Collins. She'd asked me questions about my business. Whether Michael helped with the finances. Whether working from home made it difficult to separate business from personal life. Now every question sounded different. Sarah's Instagram was private. Her Facebook wasn't. There was the bracelet. Same green stone. Then my phone buzzed. Michael. I read it twice. Then I looked at the photograph from Asheville. Again. I didn't call him. I didn't accuse him. I simply replied. He sent a heart. Again. Rachel called back shortly after noon. Sharper. I found something. What? Sable House and Ridgeway are connected. How? Their registration paperwork was filed by the same formation service. Different LLCs, same organizer, same registered mailbox. Michael? His name isn't on either. My disappointment was almost ridiculous. Then Rachel continued. But I pulled metadata from 3 of the invoices stored in your system. And they were created on Michael's laptop. There it was. No misunderstanding. My husband had manufactured invoices inside my company and used them to move my money. 4 years earlier. Michael in a navy suit, smiling at me like he'd just won the lottery. What do I do? Nothing, Rachel said. Not yet. I have $95,000 missing. And if he knows you've discovered it, whatever still exists could disappear by tonight. Whatever still exists. Because until then, I'd been thinking like someone whose money had been spent. Rachel was thinking like an accountant. I'm sending everything to you, she said. And Victoria? Yes. Change the locks on your office cabinets. By 3 that afternoon, I had made copies of every invoice, every bank transfer, and every strange hotel charge I could find. I also found 4 payments from our joint checking account to a credit card I didn't recognize. The last payment was $3,142. They wouldn't discuss the account because my name wasn't on it. The account belonged to Michael Hayes. Then the doorbell rang. For one irrational second, I thought Michael had come home. Victoria Hayes? Yes. Signature required. The return address belonged to a law office in Greenville, but as I walked back toward my office, I glanced at the date and suddenly remembered something. A month earlier, Michael had asked me where we kept our marriage certificate. What, planning to marry me again? Insurance paperwork. That memory would matter later. At 4:36, Rachel called for the 3rd time. Victoria, I'm emailing you a document. Open it. 1 attachment. What am I looking at? Wire confirmation. I already have the transfers. Not this one. $62,000. That isn't one of the withdrawals. Not directly. Follow the sender. The sender was Sable House Procurement, LLC. My money had gone from my business account to Sable House. Then, $62,000 had moved somewhere else. A second bank. An escrow account. Lake Keowee title and closing. Lake Keowee. Michael's lie about Charlotte. Sarah. What did they buy? I whispered. I don't know yet. Then another email arrived from Rachel. A property listing. 3 bedrooms. Private dock. Price. $684,000. I stared at the photographs. Quartz counters. Exactly the kind of home Michael used to tell me we'd buy someday when my business got bigger. There was one photograph of the living room facing the lake. The listing had been updated that morning. Sale pending. Rachel. I know. They used my money for the down payment. Looks that way. Instead, I whispered, can we prove it? Not yet. Then she added something. But somebody got careless. What do you mean? The closing isn't finished. When is it? Friday. 3 days away. And Victoria. I think this property is the mistake. I looked again at the house Michael and Sarah apparently believed my money was about to buy for them. How? Because people hiding stolen money usually try to make it disappear. Rachel paused. These 2 may have done the exact opposite. This one contained a single document pulled from the preliminary closing file. I opened it. Michael Hayes, Sarah Collins. For the first time all day, I smiled. I didn't. But because my husband and his mistress had taken $95,000 from me, hidden it behind fake companies, lied for months, and apparently believed they were 3 days away from turning my money into their new life. They thought that house was their escape. For the next 3 hours, I did something Michael would never have expected from me. I went to work. On him. Rachel told me to download everything before Michael realized his access had been restricted. Bank statements, invoice histories, login records, vendor profiles, every document connected to Sable House Procurement and Ridgeway Design Logistics. Michael had never cared about cabinet specifications. Then I called an attorney. Rachel recommended Daniel Mercer, A Greenville lawyer who handled business fraud and complex divorces. His assistant originally offered me an appointment the following week. I told her $95,000 had disappeared from my company, and my husband appeared to have used part of it to purchase a house with another woman. Daniel spoke to me 12 minutes later. "Do not contact the closing company yourself," he said after I explained what Rachel had found. "Why?" "Because right now Michael doesn't know how much you know. I want them to stop the closing." "So do I. But first I want to know exactly what they're closing." Daniel asked whether Michael and I had a prenuptial agreement, whether the business existed before our marriage, whether Michael owned any percentage of it. No. No. He was only an authorized user on one bank account. Good. Then Daniel asked a question I wasn't expecting. "Do you know where the rest of the $95,000 went?" "62,000 appears connected to the house. That leaves 33. I hadn't forgotten." "I don't know." "Find out." Daniel told me he would contact Rachel directly and asked me to forward every document without altering anything. Then he gave me the same instruction Rachel had. "Don't confront Michael." "Hey, babe." That was almost worse. "How was Columbia?" "Exhausting. These people can turn a 40-minute meeting into 6 hours." "You staying there tonight?" "Probably. It's raining pretty hard and I don't feel like driving." Greenville's sky was clear. That wasn't the point. "Be safe. Always." "How's the Keller project?" "Small supplier problem," I said. "Nothing I can't handle." There was silence. Maybe less. "What kind of supplier problem?" "Cabinets?" "Oh. Those people are always a nightmare." I don't remember most of it. I remember saying I loved him, but I needed Michael comfortable, and Michael had already made one. "I have the preliminary property records." "And?" "The townhouse is being purchased through an LLC. "So their names aren't actually on it?" "Not exactly. The buyer is SC Lake Ventures LLC. "Of course." "But here's where it gets interesting," Daniel continued. "Michael and Sarah are both listed as managers. So we can connect them." "Yes, but that's not the expensive mistake." I sat forward. "What is?" "I don't know yet." "The closing documents Rachel found are incomplete. I want the full title package." "Can you get it?" "I'm working on it." Sarah Collins wasn't just Michael's co-worker. Nobody had mentioned it to me. I searched her Facebook again. Then I noticed a photograph I'd missed the day before. The caption was simple. Posted 5 weeks earlier. Michael had liked it. "Congratulations. You deserve it." Then one comment stopped me. "Kiwi won't know what hit it." Sarah replied with a winking emoji. That was when another memory returned. 3 weeks earlier, Michael had asked what I thought about living near Lake Kiwi. We were eating takeout on the couch. Too far from most of my clients. "What if you didn't have to worry about clients?" "Then I'd worry about why I didn't have clients." He smiled. Now I wondered whether he had already been imagining himself in that house. With Sarah. At 10:30, Rachel arrived at my office carrying 2 coffees and a stack of printed documents. "I found the 33,000. "Where?" "Some of it. $11,400 to Ridgeway, $7,800 from Ridgeway to a furniture retailer, $5,200 to an appliance dealer, another $4,600 to an electronics store." "They're furnishing it," I said. Rachel nodded. "With your money." I looked at the amounts. Michael hadn't just stolen from me to escape. Rachel pushed another page toward me. "Look at the furniture invoice." I did. Sectional. Bed frame. Outdoor furniture. The Lake Kiwi townhouse. The day after closing. They've planned everything. Looks like it. Custom boucle lounge chair. "What?" Rachel asked. "I know that chair. It cost nearly $3,000. I wanted it for the studio I hoped to lease downtown, but I decided it was irresponsible to spend that much while I was still growing the business. Buy it when you hit your next milestone, he'd told me. Apparently, Sarah's living room counted. Rachel didn't say anything. They hurt because of their precision. Michael knew what that chair meant, and he'd used my money to buy it for her. The marriage was over. I simply hadn't told Michael yet. Daniel. I have something. Rachel put her coffee down. The title company won't release confidential closing documents to us without authorization, Daniel said. That's expected. But I pulled the financing records attached to the property. Financing? They are, but not for the full purchase. The house was listed at $684,000. Michael and Sarah were financing most of it. Then Daniel said, "Do you know anything about a property on Augusta Street?" "No." "Think. Augusta Street." Then it clicked. My studio. What studio? The building I wanted. Brick exterior. Tall windows. About 2,800 square feet. The owner wanted $410,000. Michael knew that. He knew everything about it. "That place isn't yours, is it?" Daniel asked. "No." "Did you ever make an offer?" "Not officially." "Then we may have another problem." "What?" "Someone did. The fake company receiving money from my business." Rachel leaned toward the phone. "When?" "6 weeks ago. Around the time Sarah quit her job." "Did they buy it?" I asked. "No. Offer fell through." Daniel wasn't finished. "But I don't think they wanted the building." "Then why make an offer?" "I think they wanted the paperwork." Neither did Rachel. Daniel said he needed another hour. There it was. Because for the first time, this no longer looked like Michael simply stealing money to buy a house. There was another layer. At noon, Michael texted. I stared at the message, then typed. I cleaned the house before he arrived. Maybe I needed something I could control. Flowers. These are for you. What's the occasion? Do I need one? He showered while I made pasta. His phone sat on the kitchen counter. Now I didn't touch it. Don't access anything illegally. Don't give Michael an argument about how evidence was obtained. So I stood 3 feet from that phone while the man who had stolen $95,000 from me showered upstairs. Then the screen lit up. I didn't need to. Tomorrow, 11 a.m., don't be late. Then I kept cooking. Michael came downstairs 20 minutes later. How was your day? He asked. Interesting? Good interesting or bad interesting? A little of both. You've been stressed lately. Have I? Yeah. You work too hard, Vic. I've been thinking about that. Maybe you should slow down. Maybe. You know, sell some projects, take fewer clients. And do what? Live a little. He wasn't just stealing money. If my business suddenly ran into cash flow problems, Michael could blame overwork. Rapid growth. Maybe that was why he'd been telling me for months that I looked exhausted. How much money do you think someone needs to start over? I asked. His fork stopped. What kind of question is that? Denise and Robert were talking about retirement today. It got me thinking. I don't know. Depends where you're starting over. Lake House? Michael laughed. Still thinking about Kiowa? I might be. And then he said something I'll never forget. Sometimes a fresh start is exactly what people need. I think you're right. The next morning, Michael left at 9:45. The meeting with S was at 11. I wanted to. Daniel told me not to. You already know he's having an affair, he said. We don't need photographs of them holding hands. We need the money. He was right. I figured out Augusta Street. Rachel joined by conference call. The Ridgeway offer included proof of funds. Okay. The proof of funds came from your business account. How? They never had $400,000. They didn't need it. They submitted a bank verification showing access to a revolving business line. What business line? Then Rachel whispered, "Oh no. Victoria. Someone applied for a $250,000 line of credit using Hayes Interior Studio." No. The application was submitted electronically 7 weeks ago. I never applied for that. I know. How much did they take? Nothing? What? The credit line was approved but never drawn. Why steal $95,000 when they had access to $250,000? Then Daniel explained. They didn't need the money from the credit line. They needed the approval letter. For what? To make Ridgeway look financially stronger than it was. But Victoria would have had to guarantee that line. Yes. Daniel sent the application. Hayes Interior Studio LLC. Annual revenue. Business address. Everything was correct. Then I reached the signature page. Victoria Hayes. Someone else had. And beneath my forged signature was an electronic verification certificate. Daniel said, "This is where Michael got ambitious." What do you mean? The $95,000 is serious, but forging your signature on a commercial credit application creates a completely different problem. I looked at Rachel. Michael hadn't merely emptied my account. He had put my business at risk for another $250,000. Can we prove he did it? That's what we're working on. Then Daniel told me why the Augusta Street offer mattered. Michael had used the credit approval connected to my company as financial support for Ridgeway, but the paperwork remained. A paper trail. At 12:07, Michael texted me. I looked at the forged signature on my screen. Then Rachel said something. Wait. What? The email. What email? The verification email used for the application. It looked like mine. One extra letter. Rachel searched it. Rachel? This address was created using the same recovery phone number as another account. Whose? I can't see the full number. 4817. Michael's secret credit card. Last 4 digits. 4817. Small. I sent everything to Daniel. Keep this quiet. How long? Until tomorrow. Closing day. Exactly. That evening, Michael was unusually cheerful, opened wine, put music on. I let him. But I wanted to understand how someone could behave so normally while preparing to betray another person completely. My cheek was inches from his. Remember Charleston? He asked. Of course. We should go back. Maybe. After things calmed down. Instead, I smiled. Around 10, he went upstairs. Then my phone buzzed. Daniel. Call me. Now. What happened? We got the title information. And? The house isn't being purchased jointly by Michael and Sarah. But they're both managers of the LLC. Yes. Then who owns it? The LLC does. But that's not what matters. The mortgage application lists Michael as married. Obviously. And because South Carolina has certain marital property protections tied to a primary residence, the lender required additional documentation regarding occupancy and spousal interests. Michael submitted an affidavit. What affidavit? An affidavit stating that you were aware of the purchase. He used my name again? Yes. Did he forge my signature? That's what I thought. But then I saw the notarization. What about it? She asked. The affidavit wasn't electronically signed. It was signed in person. By Michael? No. Daniel continued. Someone signed Victoria's name. And a notary certified that she personally witnessed Victoria Hayes sign it. Silence. A forged electronic signature could be blamed on hacked credentials. This was different. Who notarized it? Daniel gave us a name. Then he said, "There's more. The affidavit includes a copy of your driver's license." My license was there. The file cabinet. Michael hadn't been looking for our marriage certificate. Copies. For several seconds I couldn't speak. Then Rachel asked the question I couldn't. Was it Sarah? We don't know. Daniel told me to look at the signature again. The forged signature on the credit application. Then he sent the affidavit. 2 signatures. They weren't identical. Practiced. And suddenly, the $95,000 wasn't the part that frightened me most. Because Michael and Sarah hadn't simply been stealing my money. The next morning was Friday. Closing day. Michael left the house wearing the charcoal suit I had bought him for our anniversary. Big meeting. I hope it goes exactly the way you deserve. Thanks, babe. The closing was moved up. What time? 10:30. Less than an hour. Can we stop it? Yes. How? Because the lender has now been informed that the spousal affidavit may be fraudulent. So it's over. No. Victoria, stopping the closing isn't the most useful thing we can do. You want them to show up? I want them to sign what they intend to sign. Can we do that? The title company has counsel. The lender has counsel. Nobody is going to knowingly complete a fraudulent transaction, but they can preserve whatever Michael and Sarah present. Evidence. Not suspicion. Evidence. At 10:24, I sat in Daniel's conference room with Rachel beside me. Michael thought I was meeting a client. Nobody spoke. 10:31, 10:36, 10:42. Then Daniel's email chimed and smiled. They're there. Both? Both? Sarah had walked into the closing office with my husband. Daniel read it twice. What? There was a scanned document. Michael's signature. Sarah's signature as manager of the purchasing LLC. They had presented it again. Rachel whispered, "They actually did it." Daniel nodded. They just authenticated the paper trail themselves. But that still wasn't the expensive mistake. At 10:58, the lender suspended the closing. Michael called me at 11:06. Once. 3 times. Then came the message. I turned the phone over. You ready? For what? He slid another document across the table. SC Lake Ventures LLC, the company Michael and Sarah had created to buy the townhouse. But I hadn't seen this document. Michael Hayes, manager. Sarah Collins, manager. Then a section labeled company mailing address. Twice. And suddenly understood why Daniel had been calling the property their expensive mistake. They had used the Lake Keowee townhouse as the official address of the LLC before they even owned it. Every lender document. But Daniel tapped another line. Keep reading. Under capital contributions, Michael had documented the source of the initial funds as an investment from Ridgeway Design Logistics. Ridgeway had received money from my business, Hayes Interior Studio. Ridgeway, the townhouse. They had converted stolen money into a traceable asset and documented the path themselves because they needed to convince a lender the funds were legitimate. Oh my God, Daniel nodded. They were so focused on making dirty money look legitimate that they created a record showing exactly where it went. Michael. Hey. Vic, are you home? No. Where are you? Working. I need you to do something for me. What? Check your email. There may be a document coming from a lender. There it was. What kind of document? Nothing major. Just a verification thing. What am I verifying? Then Michael laughed nervously. It's complicated. I have time. Another silence. Victoria, just trust me. Trust me. After $95,000. After Sarah. After forged signatures. After someone had walked into a closing office carrying a copy of my driver's license and pretending I had approved the purchase of my husband's new home. Okay, I said softly. Michael exhaled. Thank you. But Michael? Yeah? You should probably call Sarah. Absolute silence. Then I said the 4 words that ended the version of our marriage he thought still existed. The closing isn't happening. He didn't answer. For the first time since the cabinet supplier called me 3 days earlier, Michael knew. What he didn't know was how much evidence we already had. He didn't know Daniel had the fake invoices. He didn't know Rachel had traced the money. He didn't know we had the forged credit application, the false affidavit, the title documents, or the corporate filings connecting Ridgeway to the house. And most importantly, he still didn't understand why buying that townhouse had been such a devastating mistake. The $95,000 was still missing. My identity had still been used. And now that Michael knew I had discovered the affair, there was no reason for him to keep pretending anymore. "Victoria," he said quietly, "you have no idea what you've just done." I looked at the documents spread across Daniel's table. Because Michael was wrong. What neither of us knew yet was what Sarah was about to do when she realized the house, the money, and Michael's carefully planned escape were all collapsing at the same time. Michael came home at 2:17 that afternoon. Daniel had wanted me somewhere else. "Let him cool down," he'd said. "We know he's under pressure." But this was my house. My business was registered there. My records were there. And after discovering that someone had copied my identification and forged my signature, I wasn't willing to leave Michael alone with anything that belonged to me. I wasn't alone. Rachel was in the guest room with the door closed, and Daniel had told me to call immediately if Michael became threatening. No, "Hey, babe." No kiss. Michael walked into the dining room and dropped his keys on the table. "What did you do?" "You're going to have to be more specific." "The house." "What house?" "Stop it, Victoria." There it was. For 4 years, Michael had been the calm one, the reasonable one. Now his face was flushed. "You contacted the lender." "I didn't." "Daniel had." "You had no right to interfere." "No right?" "Too late." "That isn't what I meant. Whose $62,000 was used for the down payment?" Michael looked toward the kitchen. "You don't understand what happened. I understand $95,000 disappeared from my business. I was going to replace it." "When?" "Soon." "With what?" "It was an investment." "My husband buying a lake house with his mistress is an investment in what exactly?" "Sarah isn't my mistress." "Not because I believed him. I saw you with her in Asheville." "We were working." "At a restaurant?" "Yes." "After you told me you were in Charlotte?" Michael didn't answer. "And the hotel?" "Small." "You checked my credit cards?" "No." Because suddenly he didn't know what I had. "Good." "Did Sarah sign my name?" Michael stood. "I'm not doing this." "Did she pretend to be me?" "I said I'm not doing this." Then I asked the question I'd been saving. "Why did you need our marriage certificate?" His back was toward me. Then he turned around. "You're making this bigger than it is." A fake company, a forged credit application, a mistress. "Leave," I said. "What?" "Leave my house." "This is my house too." "Then you can explain that to my attorney." That was when Rachel stepped into the hallway. Michael's face changed completely. Rachel crossed her arms. "Hi, Michael." "You brought your accountant into our marriage?" "No. You brought me into it when you fabricated vendor invoices in a system I reconcile." For the first time, Michael understood this wasn't an emotional confrontation between husband and wife. He walked out without another word. Rachel came back to the table. "You okay?" "No." But I was getting there. At 3:08, Sarah called me. Then I remembered the final sentence Michael had said on the phone earlier. I wanted to hear what Sarah thought I had done. "Victoria?" "Sarah. Can we talk?" "We are." "Not like this." "In person." "No." "Michael told me you know." "I know enough." "He lied to me." There it was. "He told me you were separating." "How unfortunate." "Victoria, please." "He said the business money was his too." "What?" "He told me you built the company together." "No." "He said he invested in it." "He didn't." Another silence, less rehearsed. What about Ridgeway? I asked. Sarah, I shouldn't be talking to you. Probably not. Rachel had heard enough from across the table. You believe her? About which part? That Michael lied to her. Maybe. Sarah knew he was married. She had asked me about my business. Whatever Michael had told her, she had crossed lines she could see perfectly well. Michael retained counsel. That was fast. Very. What does that mean? It means you stop communicating with him about the money. What about the divorce? I assume we're filing? Wedding photograph. A blanket his mother had given us. Yes? Then we file. The divorce petition was filed. The business account was secured. The lender formally rejected the Lake Kiowee transaction. And because the disputed funds had entered the closing process, $62,000 was frozen pending investigation rather than released back to Michael or Sarah. Then the furniture orders began collapsing. The appliances were stopped before delivery. The boucle chair? The retailer called my business because the original payment had been linked to an account now flagged for disputed transactions. Would you like us to cancel the order? The woman asked. Yes. Would you like the refund returned to the original payment source? Absolutely. The chair never reached Sarah, but the real turn came 11 days after the failed closing. Rachel was already there. What is that? Sarah's attorney produced documents. Why? Because Sarah and Michael are no longer telling the same story. Sarah claimed Michael had told her he owned half of Hayes' interior studio. Michael claimed Sarah had created Ridgeway Design Logistics independently. Sarah claimed Michael supplied all of the financial documents. Michael claimed Sarah handled the house paperwork. Each was trying to move the blame onto the other. Texts, invoices, screenshots. The first message was from Michael to Sarah. Transfer cleared. Move 8,500 through Ridgeway tomorrow. Don't use the same description. Another. V. Another message from Sarah. Michael. I stopped reading. She trusts me. Michael hadn't stolen from me because I was careless. Daniel waited until I looked up. There's more. Sarah had saved messages Michael apparently thought were deleted. Michael replied. I felt. Rachel's hand touched my arm. Sarah. Michael. Sarah. There it was. No ambiguity. Sarah had participated. Michael had directed it. Daniel closed the folder. This is no longer just a divorce dispute. What happens? I've already turned the relevant material over to the appropriate investigators. Are they going to be arrested? I can't promise you what authorities will do. But it was real. Nobody burst through the door 5 minutes after discovering a forged signature. Records. Bank. Subpoenas. A process. 3 weeks later, I received $81,700 back. The frozen closing funds returned first, then money recovered from accounts tied to Ridgeway. But by then, something strange had happened, because the money wasn't what I wanted most anymore. My business. I moved Hayes' interior studio out of my house 2 months later. The one Michael had used in his scheme? The owner contacted my commercial agent. Too many memories. Then Rachel said, "Why are you letting Michael decide what that building means?" So I went back. The floors still needed refinishing. I stood exactly where I'd stood with Michael months earlier. I bought it. Not with stolen money. With a commercial loan in my own name, business records verified by my accountant, and every signature completed by me. 6 months after the morning my cabinet supplier called, Hayes Interior Studio opened its first permanent location. Conference table in the center. Client seating near the windows. Not the one Michael bought Sarah. On opening night, Rachel stood beside me holding champagne. You realize this place exists partly because he tried to use it against you. No, I said. It exists because I wanted it before he ever touched it. Michael and I never reconciled. During the divorce, his attorneys initially argued that some of the transferred funds had been used for marital purposes. That position became much harder to maintain once the messages between him and Sarah were produced. Michael gave up any claim he believed he had against Hayes Interior Studio. And the house? Neither did Sarah. The property returned to the market after the closing failed. Same windows, same lake, but it stopped looking like something stolen from me. A house. Sarah and Michael didn't stay together. Apparently, once the money disappeared, so did the romance. Sarah blamed Michael for misleading her. Michael blamed Sarah for keeping the messages, then acted surprised when neither could trust the other. It happened almost a year after the cabinet call. The divorce was nearly complete. Daniel was nearby. Michael looked older. Just enough. "Did you ever love me?" he asked. "Yes." "Then how did you turn against me so fast?" "I didn't turn against you. You hired lawyers. You froze everything. You went after Sarah. You stole $95,000 from me. I was going to put it back. You forged my signature. I panicked. You used my driver's license. And you told Sarah to practice signing my name." His face changed. I continued. "You want to know why everything happened so fast? Because while I was still trying to understand what you had done, you were still doing it. You could have stopped after the first transfer, the second, the third. But you kept going because every time I didn't catch you, you decided that meant you were smarter than me. That isn't fair." "No, Michael. What wasn't fair was using my trust as your security system." Then he asked, "Was the house really what gave us away?" "Yes." "How?" "The money was hidden inside fake vendor transactions. If you'd kept moving it through small accounts, proving where every dollar ended up could have taken much longer." "But you needed the house?" "Proof of funds, a lender, affidavits, signatures." Michael and Sarah had been forced to take all those scattered lies and put them into one transaction. They had created SC Lake Ventures. They had used money that originated in my company. They had submitted a false spousal affidavit. "You turned my stolen money into a house," I told him. "And houses leave records. That was your expensive mistake." Then he gave a tiny laugh. Not because anything was funny. He and Sarah had believed buying something expensive would transform stolen money into something legitimate. Daniel called my name from across the hallway. "Victoria." Michael looked at me for several seconds. "I'm sorry." Now they barely reached me. "I believe you're sorry about what it cost you." The final divorce order came several weeks later. No party. No expensive trip. I went to my studio. It was Saturday morning and nobody else was there. I made coffee and opened the business account because I had invoices to pay. Normal invoices. Real vendors. Hayes Interior Studio had survived. More importantly, so had the part of me that believed building something slowly still mattered. That was probably the hardest thing to undo. Adding him to the account. Talking about my dream studio. Introducing him to clients. I thought those things made me foolish. Trust wasn't my mistake. What Michael chose to do with it was his. And I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life treating honest people like criminals because one dishonest person had once been allowed close to me. Absolutely. Dual approval on large transfers. Independent bookkeeping controls. Rachel jokes that my business now has more safeguards than some banks. But I still trust people. They simply don't get unrestricted access to everything just because I love them. When someone betrays you, your first instinct is often to demand an explanation. Why? Why the money? Why me? But if I had confronted Michael the moment I saw the first transfer, he would have known I was looking. Documents could have disappeared. Instead, I waited. Not because I was weak. That patience gave Rachel time to trace the transfers. It gave Daniel time to find the credit application. It gave the closing process time to expose the forged affidavit. And most importantly, it gave Michael and Sarah enough confidence to make one final mistake. They signed. They presented the paperwork. They tied themselves to the transaction they had spent months trying to hide. Sometimes the person deceiving you thinks your silence means you haven't noticed. Let them think carefully about that assumption, because silence can also mean you're finally paying attention. A year after everything happened, Denise Keller, the client whose missing cabinet deposit started this entire story, came to my studio. Her renovation had eventually been completed. Late, but completed. She walked through the showroom admiring everything. Then she stopped beside the windows. "This place feels like you," she said. I laughed. "What does that mean?" "Clean, calm, but very difficult to move once you've decided where something belongs." I liked that. Before leaving, she handed me an envelope. Inside was a referral for another full home renovation, my biggest contract yet. I stood alone after she left, holding that piece of paper. 1 year earlier, a missing cabinet payment had revealed that $95,000 was gone. Now a cabinet client was standing inside the studio Michael thought I would never have, handing me another opportunity. Life has a strange sense of symmetry. Michael thought he was financing his escape. Sarah thought she was getting a lake house, and both of them thought I was too trusting to notice what was happening until it was too late. They were right about one thing. I trusted Michael. Completely. But they misunderstood what happened when that trust disappeared. I didn't collapse. I started checking the numbers. And the numbers led to invoices. The invoices led to these companies. The companies led to Sarah. Sarah led to the house. And the house led directly back to them. $95,000 nearly disappeared from my life because I trusted the wrong person. But the transaction that was supposed to make their betrayal permanent became the transaction that exposed the entire scheme. So if you're listening to this because somebody betrayed you, remember something. You don't always need the loudest reaction. Sometimes you need the clearest evidence. And if you've ever had someone underestimate you because they mistook your trust for weakness, tell me in the comments what happened. If this story kept you listening, hit the like button and subscribe for more stories about betrayal, consequences, and what happens when the person everyone underestimated finally sees the whole picture. Michael and Sarah thought they had stolen $95,000 and bought themselves a new beginning. Instead, they bought the one thing they couldn't afford: a paper trail.